Hello and welcome back to the Small Games Spotlight series, where I bring you some often below the radar indie games, newly released smaller titles and demos to give them some time in the sun. Today's small game I'm giving a spotlight to is I Hate This Place from developer Rock Square Thunder and published by Broken Mirror Games. Also a quick shout out to Robbie from Pirate PR for the code for this game. If you're an indie dev looking to have your game showcased, please reach out via my social links on the channel, and if you're a new viewer here, I do reviews, deep dives and topical videos, as well as videos like these on the channel, so feel free to check it out and subscribe. And lastly, if you want to go the extra mile, I now offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. That'll give you some extra perks in return for your support. Now, let's get on to the video. The first thing you'll notice about I Hate This Place is undoubtedly its art style, very reminiscent of something like Scott Pilgrim, but the game's actually based on its own original comic series created by writer Kyle Starks and artist Artyom Topilin. This gives the game its own sense of place and art style, being referred to by the dev team as Stranger Things meets Darkwood, and I guess from a gameplay perspective, they're kind of right. You play as Elena, a teen girl out in the woods, messing around with witchcraft as young teen girls so often do. Only when her and her friend inadvertently summon a malevolent force and her friend goes missing, it's down to Elena to uncover the mysteries of the forest, her family ranch, and what happened to her mother all of those years ago when the Horned Man first appeared. What I was quite impressed with in this game is the standard of the voice acting, where pretty much every performance you get actually has some personality to it, unlike a lot of smaller budget games who dub the developers' voices over the top in hopes people won't notice, or have the dialogue fully text-based. That being said, the main story and mystery of the world didn't really do much to pull me in and keep me engaged here, although it is a nice blend of sci-fi and the supernatural. Somehow, scientists got a hold of this evil being's blood and have infused it with humans, causing horrific abominations that stalk their underground bunkers, with a few leaking out into the world above. The full mystery of finding your friend, what happened to your mother and how it gets resolved in the end though, just didn't do it for me. I was completing what I thought was a side quest and ended up finishing the main game. That's how disjointed it ended up feeling, with the main and side quests all kind of blurred into one. Rock Square Thunder have created a world that's pretty fun to explore though, filled with secret areas to find gear, resources, blueprints for crafting, and some lore items. Rewarding exploration is always key to games like this, where you have open-ended areas to play around in. The forest itself is the key player here. With a day-night cycle in the game, you'll find enemies more frequently at night, but what I will say is the nighttime never really reached the heights I was expecting. I wanted the true survival horror experience to be found creeping through the woods past hordes of monsters or some huge abomination, but that never quite happens. To compare this with Darkwood is a bit of a disservice to how unbelievably oppressive and terrifying Darkwood can be. And whilst I Hate This Place does play with lighting a bit during these night sections, I feel like there's definitely some room to improve and add a ton of new features and atmosphere on this front. What I felt were really well designed were the bunkers and caves you could explore dotted throughout the map. That felt like a huge amount of effort went into crafting them. This is where the main bulk of the tough combat can be found, and where the sneaking mechanics come into play to try and get past huge monsters without wasting a ton of ammo. The further into the game you get, the less tense this stuff feels, but at the beginning, using your little footsteps indicator to make sure you're slowly sneaking past something you definitely can't take down can be genuinely tense. These indoor sections were by far better than the open map part of the game and had more puzzles and lore items in them to flesh things out, alongside you usually getting a new weapon too. The actual gameplay itself is split into a few sections, so let's start with the combat. You have a melee attack which honestly feels a bit lackluster, but you also have firearms, which manage to feel like they pack a solid punch, as opposed to the wet noodle that is the baseball bat. There's also throwables that have a double use of clearing blockers on the map to access new areas, a very fun addition. It's worth noting that whilst the enemy designs are really cool, there's not a huge amount of variety in them. With the mutants mainly restricted to the bunkers, the rest of the enemies in the overworld are just spiders and infected deer, with the occasional infected cultist. It's a shame because what they start out with kind of gives the impression there'll be a lot of weird body horror, which I was looking forward to, only to be a bit disappointed at the overused infected wildlife. The next part of the game is fun, but in my opinion massively undermines the survival horror aspect of the game, and that's the crafting and resources side of things. Once you reach Elena's family ranch, you'll get the option to build different structures that can passively generate resources for you over time. This means if you've collected enough resources from the world, you can essentially build yourself your own Walking Dead style settlement, and you'll spend about 10 minutes every time you get back home harvesting resources and setting them all away again. You can just sleep to pass time too, and essentially have hundreds of bullets, throwables and medkits to take every time you venture out. Whilst it is fun to design what your ranch looks like, and there's a ton of cosmetic only things you can build, it can massively impact the resource struggle and tension of survival horror when you're a teenager fully armed to the teeth with automatic weapons and hundreds of bullets. The last and personally my favourite part of the gameplay is the puzzle and investigative side of the game. Most puzzles are a case of figuring out a door code based on notes and things in the environment, but if you go to the right places at night, a ghost will drag you into a side quest where essentially it'll be up to you to figure out what happened to them. This means you'll be walking around a trippy version of the afterlife, gathering clues and fending off hostile ghosts with your flashlight until eventually you'll reach a door. Once you get here, you'll be able to state what happened to the ghost in question, and you can get it wrong if you misinterpret the evidence. You really need to read the files carefully, study the rooms you see, and listen to what Elena says to make sure you get the answer right, because when you do, you're rewarded by the ghost after you leave if you came to the right conclusion. This is a great change of pace to the gameplay, and I honestly wish there was a bit more to it, perhaps in a DLC or sequel? This brings me to my overall thoughts on the game, and I'm actually quite mixed. I love the comic book art style, 80s aesthetic, and the actually quite good writing and voice acting. Where the game falls down for me is in the gameplay department, where melee combat feels a little wooden, the guns feel great but are let down by the resource crafting, removing all tension and horror from the game over time. The ghost hunting sequences are fantastic, as well as the rewards for keen-eyed exploration and the overall design of the world and the bunkers, but I feel like this one just needed a little more time in the oven to become great. I also got significant stuttering and even some hard crashes, alongside being stuck in crouch mode and the fast travel not working at all until I closed and reopened the game. So I'd definitely wait for a few patches before playing. I Hate This Place is out on January 29th on Steam, Xbox Series X and S, PS5 and Switch. And thank you again to Pirate PR for providing the key for this video. If you feel like you learned something about the game, drop a like on the video to let me know I helped you out, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more gaming content like this in the future. I'll drop the links to the store page and the dev's social media down below, and if you want to speak to me directly, you can drop me a message over at x.com/gracious_rhino. I'm Gracious Rhino, look after each other, and I'll catch you soon.